There we go.
Jane
Okay.
and Jane live talk with some breaking news about the whole crisis involving LA's last coastal wetlands, the Ballona Wetlands. There is now a whole campaign and a new organization dedicated to defending the Ballona Wetlands and to stopping. And whoever has their phone on, turn the phone off. And to stopping the disastrous plan to destroy LA's last remaining coastal wetlands, which is a mosaic of vibrant habitats. This plan to bulldoze the wetlands is going to put hundreds of species at risk and perpetuate our reliance on dirty energy. There is a new website that has just launched. We're going to show it to you right now. And I can tell you that it lists a lot of the species that will be threatened and destroyed if this plan to bulldoze 640 acres actually happens. So you can go to Defend Ballona Wetlands and do all the research. We're talking about owls. We're talking about other species that are thriving in this wetlands right now. So I want to go to Marcia Hanscom, who is an expert, along with some of the other panelists here, to discuss why this is such a disturbing plan and why you feel Angelenos need to stand up and denounce it.
Well, this part of the Los Angeles coast has been under threat for many, many years. And in 2004, we thought we had protected 640 acres of land there. The state of California bought the land and we thought everything was fine. But we didn't realize how much SoCal Gas, Sempra, this big gas company, has their hooks into the wetlands still. They have a huge underground gas storage facility, and it impacts everything about the Ballona Wetlands. And unfortunately, there's a big plan afoot that would, as you say, bulldoze the entire place, and it would benefit SoCal Gas. It would not benefit the animals, which would lose their homes.
So I want to go back to the website, which just launched, and take a look at some of the things that are happening on the website that explain this a little bit more. So let me first go to Lisa Levinson. Tell us why IDA is so involved in this, Lisa.
Well, we're involved because this is an issue of concern to our supporters. These animals, many of them are endangered and special species of concern in this pristine habitat that has been preserved for years and was slated to be for the animals, is now under siege. And so we want to defend these animals, as in our namesake, and we're excited to be partners with many other groups who are also working hard to protect this wetlands.
Okay, and so if we go to the website that just launched, which is called defendballonawetlands.org, you can see here that there is a lot of evidence concerning something a lot of people are not aware of, that there are oil wells, gas wells in the Ballona Wetlands, which, by the way, if you're an Angeleno, starts at Lincoln Boulevard and Jefferson, and it's in the Playa del Rey area near Marina del Rey. And you can see now, if you look at this, that there are gas wells and other significant
access roads.
Yeah, access roads and all sorts of things involving, take a look at this. I mean, they're all over the place. And so one of the key issues here is to show people that this so-called restoration, where there is a plan to bulldoze the last remaining wetlands in Los Angeles, 640 acres, which is now filled with thousands of wild animals thriving. They will be destroyed. They will lose their habitat. migrating birds will also lose their habitat. And the belief amongst the critics, Roy, is that this is being done as a cover in order for SoCal Gas to be able to get in there and refurbish their crumbling oil well system. Otherwise, they'd have to shut it down. Can you outline that for people?
It's absolutely a scam, to put it bluntly, of the gas company, International Sempra, headquartered in San Diego. They don't want us to know that they're behind the scenes pulling the levers like the Wizard of Oz, like what's going to happen. And the gas company is also relying on Chevron and Edison, other corporations that are, petroleum and fossil fuel based. And they're masquerading to say that the wetlands are dead and dying, but in common looking, even if you're not a scientist, I've documented or seen that there's 1,700 species of fauna and flora there, but they're trying to say that this ecosystem here at Ballona is dead or dying, and it's got problems, and that's just not true.
Well, yes. And on this website, defendballonawetlands.org, there are many, many photos of hundreds of animals. Take a look at these egrets.
Yeah, great egret and snowy egret. Two of the larger ones are there in the foreground, and the two smaller species. Many of the public think those are young birds, but those ones in the back are adult too. The one they're all showing wispy feathers, showing they're in breeding plumage. And they're nesting, they're foraging and finding fish and worms and little crabs in the wetlands. But by night, they sleep in trees in Marina del Rey, or landscape trees around the apartments and the condos and nearby Venice and Marina del Rey. And this shows this linkage too between urban and nature. And there's so much more I want to tell you about what's going on with those 4 egrets right there. But that's a slough tidal that's filled with water at high tide, and then at low tide it's showing soil. But so the fish have to move around when the water moves too, and that causes the egrets to also need secondary resting sites when they can't find food during the daytime for a few hours if the tide's not in the right position for spearing and hunting for the fish. And it's not just any fish. These are native fish. They're unusual and special fish. And there's approximately 10 species of fish that they're searching for. And they can also hunt for animals in the grassland. So on the grassland, there might be frogs, lizards, butterflies, caterpillars, things like that. Oh, there's the white-tailed kite. Both a migratory species as well as a resident species at Ballona. That red eye shows you it hunts at the crepuscular hour for small mice. It's one of our smallest hawks of the world. And they nest at Ballona, again, in ornamental landscaping trees of pine trees in people's yards, but hunt and get all their prey down at the Ballona wetlands.
I'm going to show some more because you are so knowledgeable about this. Let's put in the skunk. Here's a skunk that would be killed.
Not just any kind of skunk. We have 2 skunks in Los Angeles, the striped skunk and the spotted skunk. It would be nice to have the spotted skunk again too, but let's be happy we have at least the striped skunk. Been evolving in North America for millions of years, and it's very special. It's an insect and a worm feeder. They breed and have their young. They depend on the ecological reserve, but they depend on the suburban fringe around too, because they go into neighborhoods as well. They're beautiful. They're
Look,
cool.
We could go on all day showing the hundreds of different species that live in this thriving wildlife. So Lisa Carlin, why is there a plan to destroy it all and to describe it as dying and dead when I personally could go into a court of law, raise my hand, and testify that that's not true because I live adjacent to the Ballona wetlands? And just yesterday, there was a peacock outside my door. A peacock. I've seen pairs, mating pairs flying overhead. I see the egrets. I see the ducks. I see all of these wild animals. Why on earth is there this plan to bulldoze the whole thing and to say that that is a restoration, Lisa?
It's really unfortunate that there are several entities that are stating that they're environmental organizations, and it's very, very unfortunate that these organizations have the ear of the community, and we need to get the word out that what they're doing is really taking advantage of the last remaining wetlands in Los Angeles. This is a beautiful area that is vibrant with wildlife and species that are endangered. And it's just a terrible thing. So our goal with this website, you can learn all the details about what's going on by going to defendballonawetlands.org. We need to stop these organizations. This is not a restoration. It is, in fact, they're pulling the wool over our eyes, and we need to stand up and be a voice for these voiceless animals that are unfortunately going to be destroyed if this project takes place.
Now,
it's a burrowing owl.
Yeah, that's the burrowing out. It's also going to cost $250 million, Marcia. $250 million of public money to bulldoze a wetlands where hundreds of species, some of them threatened, some of them, certainly at risk. They're all at risk. Where are they going to go? Where is this owl going to go if they destroy his or her home?
Well, that's a very good question. And the people who are proponents of this project regularly say, oh, well, they'll come back. Well, that's just not how nature works. Yes, there are some birds that might be able to fly away once the dozens of bulldozers come in and start their foraging of their own there. But many of the species can't escape bulldozers, and the habitat will be altered forever. It will be altered to help SoCal Gas and the fossil fuel industry. It will not be altered to help the wildlife. And why would you even alter it when you have so much vibrant wildlife? 7 endangered species and dozens of species that are on the California State Species of Special Concern list. Now, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has somehow been snookered by these folks at the gas company and the Bay Foundation, which is a front for the fossil fuel industry. And these two organizations have sort of captured the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's shocking that they even are considering this.
There's a barn owl.
There's a barn owl.
I mean, I'm just showing all the wildlife, just some of the wildlife. I can never show all of it, but just showing some of the wildlife that is existing. These photos were taken there.
Right.
These animals live there. These are not photos from some movie. These
American habitat.
Yeah, they're living there right now. So certainly if people are interested in this issue, from an environmental and a climate change perspective, Lisa Levinson, this is also a very important issue. We know that the pandemics that we're experiencing currently have to do with humans getting over interconnected with wild animals. This is all believed to have started because of that. These are zoonotic diseases. If we chase off, these wild animals only have 640 acres left. Where on earth are they going to go? Obviously, they're going to die. There's no place else for them to go, Lisa Levinson.
Yes, well, actually, the project is slated to take about 9 years. And what they've said they would do with these animals is cage them, to put them in cages during this time. And these species that we've seen these wonderful pictures of, they're probably not going to survive for 9 years in cages with people taking care of them. They had a similar project in Malibu when they restored the lagoon there, and they did put the animals in cages, and that project was a much shorter duration, and they had a tidewater goby there, which was a species of special concern, and that species is now suffering. They did not come back fully, and now we may lose that species completely locally to the area, and that's a concern. With the same thing could happen with this project. This is a much larger in scope and scale than the Malibu Lagoon project, and the animals, as you know, animals don't do well in cages, and that idea that they're going to cage these 1,000 animals and then for 9 years and put them
They're
back.
going to cage animals for 9 years, a heron. I mean, this is
No way.
how anybody could even buy that this is a restoration. How anybody could even buy that this is something that environmentalists should be outraged. Anybody who considers themselves an environmentalist, anybody who believes in climate change, anyone who wants to stop the next pandemic needs to stand up and say, this is outrageous. And I understand that IDA, In Defense of Animals, has just launched a tweet on their Twitter page. You can go to IDA USA, and we'll put that in the comments section, and start tweeting now, and visit Defend Ballona Wetlands. There's a letter there under Take Action where you can write to our politicians to say, we don't want this. So Marcia, where does this stand right now? And why is this something that seems to be going under the radar until now?
Well, for about more than 12 years, they've actually been planning this project. More than $20 million of our public money has already been spent on just planning this project, which right there tells you there's something wrong. And this last December, a final environmental impact report was released by the state of California, by Fish and Wildlife, and they're getting ready to approve this environmental impact report, which is insane. It's not an adequate environmental impact report. They don't talk about these animals and each one, how they're going to be impacted. They have just a cursory view, and very little is said about the gas company, which is really at the heart of this project. The plan is to excavate more than 2 million cubic yards of soil and move it all around. That is not a restoration. And so there are other permits they have to get, but they have purposely been trying to keep it under the radar because they need more government money. And we need to stop that. We need to stop this $250 million that they need to proceed with this. And we need to let everyone know. And I want to say, too, there are environmental groups that are opposed to this project. The Sierra Club, besides In Defense of Animals, the Sierra Club, Los Angeles Audubon Society. There are numerous groups, and I think that this website, oh yes, you've got it there, organizations opposed to bulldozing Ballona. There's a whole list of them, and I think that there are more that as soon as they learn about this project, even the Los Angeles County Democratic Party has passed a resolution against this, but somehow the word hasn't gotten out. So I'm grateful this website has popped up, and I hope that more people pay attention.
Yes, and you can tweet right now in opposition to this at IDA USA, at IDA, which stands for In Defense of Animals USA, at IDA USA. And go to defendballonawetlands.org, and there is a letter that you can write that will automatically be sent to all the politicians who will ultimately make a decision on this. So with all of these organizations, I counted something like 60 organizations opposed to this. Protect Playa Now, Climate Reality Project, Los Angeles Audubon Society, Sierra Club, Eastwood Ranch Foundation, In Defense of Animals, Ballona Institute, Food and Water Watch, LA County Democratic Party, Green Dream Campaign, Resource Renewal Institute, and Jane Unchained has issued an editorial in opposition to this. There's many, many groups that are opposed to this. Are politicians now starting to see that this is, frankly, for lack of a better word, crazy? I mean, it's literally paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. Don't they plan to put a 350 car parking garage in there, Lisa Levinson, as part of this?
Yes, so there are plans afoot to expand the trails and to have this area be more for public recreation, which there actually are existing trails that many people are already using in the area that don't need to be refurbished. So there's a lot of infrastructure that they're putting in when they go in and update their gas facilities. They're planning to do this, to have this cover of improving this for the public, for perhaps inner city children who may use the area when this area is located nowhere near the inner city children where they live. So we have this this
What I
cover.
see is a false storyline. Oh, this is for the inner city kids.
Absolutely. May I chime in?
Yes,
Inner cities-
absolutely.
Inner city school, thank you. Inner city school come twice a week for the last 20 years with Los Angeles Audubon Society to the Ballona Wetlands. It's one of the most visited areas by elementary school children, as I said, twice a week. And there are other tours going on that I've led as well. For 10 plus years, I did over 100 tours. We did full moon walk tours that was open to adults and their families. So there's a lot of access at Ballona Wetlands now.
Yeah, and aren't they, Marcia, aren't they keeping some of the trails closed to kind of try to make the case that they need to have more trails, so that they are taking the existing trails? Because I know I live near here. I've gone on the trails. I've gone on the bike paths. I've seen the wildlife. There are trails. There are bike paths. There are tours. There are all of that already, but they're actually closing some up. And you believe it's to try to make the case that, oh, there are no trails, when the trails are just locked up, some of them.
Right. There's actually a trail that Fish and Wildlife wanted to open up. There was a plan for it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of public money were put out to install bicycle racks and some beautiful benches and signage. And they haven't opened them up. Guess who gets to use them? SoCal Gas. They get to use it to send their trucks in to service their wells, their oil wells and gas wells. But the public isn't allowed to use them. And I think it's because they are using the idea that they'll open up some of these trails if you will just approve this big, massive project. And it's, that's just wrong.
So
bait and switch.
Yeah, so let me ask you this question then. You've got approximately 60 groups in opposition. You have the environmental issue, which is pretty obvious. If you've got all these species there who are thriving, who are living, and obviously they will die, they will have no place to go. Not to mention the migratory bird issue. This is a landing spot for migratory birds, and they won't have anywhere to go if this is turned into a Disneyland, basically with a big parking garage, and it's just basically gonna not be a wetlands anymore. So, Robert, what do you feel is the big environmental picture here that people who consider themselves environmentalists should take note of?
The big picture is everybody, every citizen, every resident needs to do due diligence on their own and never just assume that an environmental group is doing good work. There's a lot of greenwashing out there, and this is really obvious here. I won't mention the organizations to be on the watch for and those that you can trust, and that's the issue. The big picture is you've got to ask who's funding the environmental group. You've got to ask, like if you find out the Chevron's supporting an environmental group, that should raise pause. So we now are in the 21st century. We have to question which environmental groups are high quality, are genuine and honest and transparent, and who are hiding where they're getting their donations from.
So essentially, there are donations coming in. And by the way, we invite the gas company on and any group associated with this on either side, anytime on Jane Unchained. We want to have a dialogue. We would like to have a dialogue with the few organizations that are supporting it. And of course, the there's something like 60 organizations now that are in opposition. So where is this going, Marcia? What's the next step?
Well, the next step is we're watching every day to find out if the state of California is going to certify this environmental impact report. They have not done that yet. If they do, there are questions about whether the report is legal and whether there will be litigation happening. There also are questions about a new discovery we learned about recently, and that is that the engineers that were paid all this money, millions of dollars, to plan this project, they apparently used the wrong flood control standard. And what that means is Ballona Creek goes right through the middle of the ecological reserve. It's part of the ecological reserve. And the creek serves not only as amazing habitat, there are a couple of endangered species that actually use the creek sides as part of their habitat, but it also serves as flood control for the whole region. All of the residents and businesses that live in the area are protected from big floods if we have a big rainstorm or a thunderstorm, and then they're protected from a big flood happening by this creek channel being there. Well, the flood control district of the county and the Army Corps of Engineers, which oversees that as well, they have to look to see if the changes they want to make, they want to take out, demolish the sides of the levees, and that would change the flood control issues there. And it turns out they've used the wrong flood control standards. They use standards that are less protective of the public. And the Army Corps of Engineers, usually we're very concerned about them. But what we've learned is that they actually are concerned about this project. So there are big questions being raised at the federal government level as to whether or not this project would be protective of the people that live in the area and the businesses. They could get flooded out with this if this project goes through. But the oil and gas industry in this state of California is the most financially in charge of Sacramento. They give more money than any other industry to the elected officials and to lobbying them. So it's not a surprise that this might be happening undercover, and that there are some good people in government going, wait a minute, let's question this. And the public has to really raise our voices so that more of these elected officials understand the implications.
May I chime in a little bit and supplement Marcia's statement? Of course. Pretty good. So as Marcia said, it's a Ballona Creek and it's a flood control channel. That's your engineering type language that is defending us from having flooding. That's good. But simultaneously, it's an estuary, the lower Ballona Creek. It's a river estuary. You saw a picture of the crab, Pachygrapsis crassipes. That's a native crab that's there. You saw both a picture of a sea lion and a harbor seal. They come into the estuary on a daily basis at high tide and mid tide levels. The tides in this river go up and down. It's a mixture of freshwater and saltwater. There are more than 30 species. It seems kind of odd, that we're only getting to learn that it's called a flood control channel. We need to remember that it is a flood control channel, but we have to also enter into our vocabulary and our discussion that it's a fully functioning estuary with a wetland, and that it has deep water habitat, and it's got all the processes of any estuary in the world, and that would be lost too if we took the levees out.
So, Lisa Carlin, how do we activate people in the Marina del Rey, Playa del Rey, Venice, Santa Monica, Huntington Beach area? I mean, this is their backyard.
I think the best way to get them is through using social media, contacting the city council members, contacting the assembly members, the California State Assembly members for these particular regions, and trying to mobilize people that are the constituents of these assembly members and state senators. We have a Twitter campaign going on now, and the Twitter handle is #defend Ballona. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, and we just changed it. So that's the, I'll say it again, it's hashtag defend Ballona, Ballona. And that's probably the best thing we can do. Use social media to share and target city officials, target schools. I noticed yesterday when I was on looking for hashtags, I saw that there are various schools, Santa Monica High School, Venice High School, Lawndale High School, that all have environmental programs that are connected with several of these so-called environmental organizations that are raising money to promote this restoration. I think we need
It's not a restoration. Let's not.
No, it's not. No. I said so-called.
Let's not use the Orwellian language that falsely describes this as a restoration. It's not a restoration. That's the whole point.
That's why I said so-called restoration. It's not. It's a destruction of the last remaining wetlands. But I think that we can maybe mobilize some of the high school students. I think they may be wanting to do projects because they're all being educated at home. They're sheltering at home, and it might make a lot of sense. This would be a great project for them to decide, is this or is this not going to destroy this wetland?
Well, it is going to destroy the wetlands.
No, we think
if you bulldoze the wetlands, where
so what I'm saying
more
is
than 1,000 species live. 1,700.
So I'm thinking that we can get maybe,
how many animals are there?
Get the community to take a stand so that they can protect these wetlands.
How many animals do you estimate are there in this 640 acres, Robert?
Okay. Great question. There's about 1,200 species of insects and spiders, and I haven't. That's your invertebrates, animals without backbones. There's 300 species of birds. There's about 30 species of mammals, about 10 species of reptiles, 2 species of amphibians, 40 to 50 species of fish. And I've left out some of the other taxonomic groups, but I've covered all the vertebrate animals and most of the invertebrates. But in the estuary part, there are plankton, microbial, small organisms and species. So when I say 1,700 species there, and by the way, I shared that knowledge through to the Ballona Institute and the Sierra Club, and then the press release of IDA has used that. I gave a conservative number as 1,700 species, but there's more. And I haven't discussed the flora, the kinds of algae that are there, lichens, fungi, mushrooms. It's probably closer in reality when you look at all the kinds of species that are there, probably 3,000 species. There's kind of a general rule of thumb in looking at animals that every animal, like ourselves, have animals associated with us that are in our digestive system, for example, like the positive bacteria we have, and other kind of animals we call parasites that are really in symbiosis.
Well, okay, I want to jump in and just say that you've established that there are really, this is going to be an ecological catastrophe, Lisa Levinson. You are In Defense of Animals, but it's a climate change catastrophe too. I mean, part of the reason we're in this crisis, this pandemic, is because wild animals have the habitat is being destroyed globally. And if this can happen in LA, supposedly the most forward-thinking, progressive, they say whatever happens in California spreads. And I've talked to some environmental experts who say these phony restorations are happening all over the world because it's a land grab, frankly. Lisa.
Yes, it is. And this is no different. I mean, here, this is actually happening up and down the coast in a lot of these seaside communities. It's happening in Topanga, which is just slightly north. So these developer folks who are using public bond money to actually fund these projects are exploiting the natural environment, and they're doing it to their own benefit. It does not benefit these animals, as we've seen in Malibu community with the Malibu Lagoon. It actually, the species are suffering. And one thing that will happen in the Ballona wetlands, they're planning to flood it with salt water. And I think that's something really important to mention, because the species that are there now have learned to evolve with this beautiful flow of fresh water and salt water. And if they flood the wetlands with more salt water than it's used to, a lot of the animals there who are adapted to using fresh water for their life and lifestyles will suffer and die.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And I want to say something as somebody who lives here, and I've lived in this neighborhood since 1990. And, it has evolved as well into a very pretty much exclusive neighborhood. It's called Silicon Beach. So what the open spacing that they're opening is not in an area that is for inner city kids. If you wanted to help inner city kids, put green space in an area where inner city kids live. There are already bike trails up the wazoo here, up and down. I could bike for 200 miles without stopping in this neighborhood.
Well, and I think it's important to note that we want inner city families to be able to enjoy the coast. But there are, as you say, there are bike paths. There's a trail they could open tomorrow that would help people access this. But this is not about public access. This is actually would remove public access. The beautiful bike path that goes right through the middle of the ecological reserve on Ballona Creek, which many people love. And Robin Abkarian from the Los Angeles Times recently wrote about, that would be completely demolished, and they would move trails and bike paths in different places, make it much more difficult for people to ride their bikes in the areas they're used to. And they would actually be removing the beautiful area where the rowing teams get their exercise. So it actually would be diminishing public access. And I would encourage people to go to the Sierra Club website on Ballona Wetlands and look at that, because they've done a good analysis about public access actually being diminished if this project goes forward.
Yes, and what I meant was, and maybe I didn't articulate it very well, thank you for jumping in, is that it's being sold in some circles as, let's open up this area for kids. And I don't think that's genuine. I think that's another front, just like it's a restoration. This is really a tragedy, is what I see. It's a tragedy, Lisa Carlin.
It is a tragedy. And let me say that there's $250 million proposed for this bogus project. And that money, especially in the time of coronavirus, could be used in a much better fashion. Let's just let's just make this area, protect it and not destroy it, because we'll never get it back. It will be gone for good.
Well, isn't it supposed to be protected? It's called the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve.
Exactly.
And one of the articles that described this bulldozing that's going to take 9 years and $250 million, and $20 million has already been spent to plan this, describes it as a Disneyfication. We don't need Disneyland. We don't need to destroy the wetlands and put in a Disneyland. Guess what? We've already got Disneyland. And right now, Disneyland is very crippled because of a pandemic that was caused by our unhealthy interactions with wildlife.
Right.
Okay, so this is in the era of COVID-19, where the entire world economy has been destroyed because we are disrespecting wildlife.
Right.
Okay, this is the last thing we need, Lisa Levinson.
Yes, it is, because research is showing that when you disturb a ecological environment, when you go in and destroy the habitat, it also exposes us to some of the zoonotic diseases which can spread. So that's another really important reason why, especially at this time, we don't want to be disturbing this wetlands. We want to have it remain to contain all of the ecosystem exactly the way it is, and because it's functioning very well.
That's the thing. It's being described by proponents who are very much outweighed by the opponents. We showed you there's 60 organizations approximately that have stood up and said they're in opposition to this. But it's been described, this 640 acres, by the people who want to bulldoze it as dead and dying. Now, Roy, the photographs that we've been showing people are animals that are in there right now. What would you say to those who claim that the Ballona Wetlands is dead or dying?
I would say and wish that they would go away and not say they're dead and dying. I would like to have integrity in scientists, to be genuine and, not hide behind their titles too. Yeah, as I pointed out earlier, there's so much diversity here, and there are endangered species. The least Bell's vireo was shown, a songbird that migrates 1,000 miles from Central America to come and nest at the Ballona Wetlands. There are just so many examples I could give to you. We need to leave alone, as Lisa said, that it's a fully functioning. The processes of nature are here, and as we're moving farther and farther away from the DDT era of the 1960s, we're seeing new fauna rebounding. A butterfly called the mourning cloak has rebounded from that DDT era and breeds at Ballona and uses willow trees to lay her eggs on. It's one more example right there. We have new laws and ordinances in the city of Los Angeles that don't allow poisons, for killing rats around your house or mice. Those have side effects and tangential negative effects to owls that might feed on one of those poisoned rodents. So all of these, as another example that goes along with the DDT, and we're being more careful. The city of Los Angeles Recreation and Parks is more healthy about coyotes and letting them be with us. So we're seeing animals. The coyotes only come back to Ballona at around 2008. So it's only been back for the last 12 years after a hiatus of probably 75 years of no coyote at Ballona Wetlands.
Now, Marcia, I want to ask you about LA County, LA City, and the state of California, all of which have said, and their leaders have said, we want to move away from fossil fuels. And how does that intersect with this crisis involving the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve that they are trying and planning to use $250 million of public money to destroy by bulldozing in their entirety and spending 9 years supposedly creating a Disneyfied version of it, where there's going to be a giant parking lot, 10 miles of bike paths, even though there were bike paths already. Where does the fossil fuel question come in, since the city, the county, and the state have all said they want to move away from fossil fuels? And as you've contended, the real agenda of this phony restoration is to get into those oil wells to fix them up so they can continue using them. Because if they don't get in there and bulldoze all this and fix all those wells, they're crumbling and they're going to have to abandon them, according to you.
Well, that's the point. And I mean, this project would facilitate SoCalGas being able to stay and have their big, huge gas field that is way too dangerous. The state of California commissioned a study that concluded that the Playa del Rey gas field is the most dangerous gas storage facility in the whole state, and it really should be shut down, according to our city council member, Mike Bonin. He has called for shutting down the facility. Our county supervisor, Janice Hahn, has called for shutting down the facility. The County Board of Supervisors has written to Gavin Newsom, our governor, asking that a decommissioning of the site happen. Our state senator, Ben Allen, has written asking for that same thing. And this project would actually facilitate them staying longer, staying decades into the future, when what we really need to be doing is moving away from fossil fuel, not installing new infrastructure for fossil fuel. And by the way, the gas that is used at Playa del Rey, primarily the customers are Chevron and Edison and all of these big facilities that use gas to power up their facilities. We shouldn't be using gas. The mayor even said a year ago, we should be having the beginning of the end of using gas in Los Angeles. And so this project moves in the total opposite direction of that. And we're, as our friends at Climate Reality Project, Molly Basler and Michael Zelniker consistently say, we are in a climate emergency. If we are in a climate emergency, this is the last project we should be doing. We should be talking instead about how to close down the gas facility.
I want to thank everybody who joined today. Marcia, Roy, Lisa, and Lisa, the two Lisas. And if you want to get involved, you can go to defendballonawetlands.org. There is a page where you click in Take Action, and literally with one click, you can send a letter to senators, Congress members, and state and local officials. You can also go to IDA USA on Twitter, IDA USA, that's the In Defense of Animals Twitter account, and retweet a tweet that they just put up about this. And so, these animals cannot speak for themselves. And I could testify in a court of law, and I will if I have to, that the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve, 640 acres in the Playa del Rey area, is alive and thriving with thousands of animals. You've just heard the evidence here. Why on earth would we want to bulldoze it for 9 years and destroy thousands of animals' lives and homes, migratory bird landing paths, landing areas, and basically trash it so we can put up another parking lot and turn it into another Disneyland? Nature is telling us something with this pandemic. It's saying social distance with wildlife. Mm-hmm. Let wildlife have a little space to live, or we're all done. Yes. So we need to wake up, and every Angelino and every American, because they're pulling this nonsense across the world. I've talked to numerous experts say, oh yeah, another phony restoration. They use these words. It's Orwellian. They're using the word restoration to destroy what they are purporting to restore.
And come on, scientists out there in the world, come forward out of academia, come forward even if you work for a corporation, and have your integrity as a scientist to not put your hand in the cookie jar, or be quiet, speak out. We need lots of scientists too that are genuine to come forward and join with the activists.
Yes, this is going to take a huge campaign. Luckily, there are 60 organizations that have already voiced their opposition. They are on defendballonawetlands.org. Get involved. Go to defendballonawetlands.org, and more will be revealed on this campaign. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.